It happened on a Thursday night, cold, quiet, and too still for the kind of tragedy that was about to unfold. And Tyler Brooks remembered the sound before anything else. The metallic shriek of bending steel, the echo of glass exploding, and the silence that followed, that haunting kind of silence that doesn't belong to the living. It wasn't supposed to rain that night, but it did. The kind of rain that blinds headlights, that makes the road shimmer like a sheet of oil. Rebecca had been late coming home. She said she was working late, finalizing a client's account. Tyler remembered her last message, short, distracted, and oddly formal. "Don't wait up, love you." It didn't feel like her. But love teaches you to ignore the small things, doesn't it? You learn to trust the routine even when it starts to sound unfamiliar. When the phone rang, Tyler thought it was her, but the voice that answered wasn't soft. It was flat, official, trained to deliver bad news. They said there had been an accident just outside of town, a collision between two vehicles on the river road. One of the drivers didn't make it. By the time Tyler reached the scene, the rain had turned to mist. Red and blue lights cut through the fog, reflecting against the wet asphalt. He saw the paramedics moving quietly, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. And then he saw her car, folded in half, front smashed against the guardrail, smoke rising from the hood. Her handbag lay open on the ground beside a broken mirror, lipstick bleeding into the puddles like spilled blood. They said she died instantly. No pain, no struggle. But grief doesn't care about science or mercy. It asks questions no one can answer. Tyler stood there for hours, watching the rain swallow the evidence, wishing she'd somehow step out from behind the ambulance and tell him it was all a mistake. In the days that followed, life became mechanical. Condolences arrived like clockwork, coworkers, friends, even strangers from the neighborhood. Everyone said the same words, as if they'd practiced them beforehand. She was too young. She loved you so much. Time heals all wounds, but time doesn't heal what it doesn't understand. Tyler went through the motions, the funeral, the paperwork, the insurance calls. The police report said the same thing every tragedy says, no signs of foul play. Her car had hydroplaned, lost control, and hit the railing. That was it. An accident, case closed. But some things didn't fit. The first was her phone. When he tried to access it, the screen showed a new passcode, not the one she'd used for years. The second was her planner. The last entry wasn't about work. It was a reminder scribbled in her handwriting, Thursday ba Sherwool P.M. Pier. She died at Botsasarar. Then there was the suitcase, half-packed. Not for business, but for travel, casual clothes, no office files, no client notes. He found it in the closet 2 days after the funeral, tucked behind a row of winter coats. It wasn't hidden, just forgotten, as if she'd been interrupted mid-plan. Tyler told himself these were coincidences. That grief was making him see patterns in the cracks. But when you've shared a life with someone long enough, you can tell when something doesn't belong. Her smile in the framed photos suddenly looked different, practiced, maybe even guilty. At night, Tyler would sit in the dark, replaying the sound of that phone call, the crash, the silence. He'd ask himself the same question over and over again, not why she died, but what she was doing before it happened. A week later, while sorting through her things, he found it, a small leather-bound notebook, tucked in a jewelry box she never used. On the first page, in neat cursive, were words that made his chest tighten, in Opaslish, "Do not forget." He didn't know it yet, but that notebook would be the first crack in the illusion of his marriage, and the beginning of a revenge that would haunt more than one ghost. The notebook felt innocent enough at first, just a small, worn leather journal, the kind Rebecca used to jot grocery lists or flight numbers. But there was something different about this one. It wasn't on her desk, or in her bag, or anywhere she would normally keep something important. It was hidden, buried beneath old necklaces, foreign coins, and a faded photo of her as a teenager. It didn't belong there. Tyler sat on the edge of the bed, turning it over in his hands. The leather was aged, creased at the corners, soft from years of use. Inside, the pages were filled with neat handwriting, Rebecca's handwriting, but not the kind that spoke of memories or dreams. Each line was a sequence, emails, dates, random strings of numbers, and words that looked like gibberish. It wasn't poetry. It was encryption. At the top of the first page, one line stood out, MacBook, blue folder, our spy Lou. Tyler's stomach tightened. Rebecca's old laptop sat quietly on the study desk, collecting dust since the funeral. He hadn't touched it, partly out of respect, partly out of fear. But now something in him shifted. Curiosity began to outweigh grief. He plugged it in. The machine whirred to life, screen flickering open like an eye awakening from sleep. It asked for a password. He typed the one he knew, her birthday, access denied. He tried their wedding date, access denied again. Then he looked down at the notebook. On the second page, written in small letters, was a simple word, horizon. He typed it. The desktop blinked open. For a moment, nothing looked unusual. Documents, music folders, old vacation pictures. But then, at the corner of the screen, he noticed a single folder labeled Work to Trip Chin Chicago. Rebecca hadn't been to Chicago in years, not since before they were married. He hesitated, the mouse hovering over the folder. Something about opening it felt wrong, like crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But grief had turned into suspicion, and suspicion always demands proof. He double-clicked. Inside were dozens of files, photos, screenshots, documents, voice notes. At first, they looked like work material, but the deeper he scrolled, the clearer it became. These weren't work files at all. There were hotel receipts, dinner reservations for two, and photos of her standing on a balcony that wasn't theirs. A man's reflection appeared in one of the glass windows, tall, well-dressed, and unmistakably close to her. Tyler's pulse quickened. His hands trembled as he clicked through each file, searching for something that could explain what he was seeing. But instead of answers, he found something worse, an email chain between Rebecca and someone named Daniel Cross. Daniel. The name alone felt foreign and invasive, like poison whispered through a keyhole. Their messages were written in careful, coded language, project updates, client meetings, Krotchethausen Efterhelshens, night sessions, until he read one that stripped all pretense away. You looked beautiful last night. I hate sneaking around, but it's better this way. He doesn't suspect a thing. Tyler froze. His chest tightened until breathing felt like a chore. He scrolled down further, more emails, more secrets, stretching back months. Maybe years. The betrayal wasn't new. It was seasoned, rehearsed, methodical. And the worst part? Rebecca had protected it behind passwords, hidden it under the guise of her everyday life. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. The storm outside tapped against the window like fingers on glass. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, echoing the same hollow pitch from the night she died. For the first time since the accident, Tyler didn't feel grief. He felt clarity, a cold, focused kind of clarity that burns hotter than rage. He clicked on the final file in the folder, a video clip labeled simply Pier. The thumbnail showed Rebecca standing near the railing, the same one where her car had crashed weeks earlier. She was talking to someone off camera. Tyler turned up the volume, but the sound was faint, drowned by wind and water. Then, just before the clip ended, a single phrase slipped through. Nope, it's done, he won't find out. The video froze. Tyler sat motionless, his reflection staring back from the dark screen. The words rang in his head over and over again, each repetition twisting the knife deeper. The police had called it an accident, but accidents don't come with passwords. They don't come with secret videos or hidden lovers. He closed the laptop slowly, his face expressionless. The rain outside had stopped. Watamajina Strian no what I were shrauken. The night was silent again, but this time the silence wasn't peaceful. It was a beginning, the moment grief turned into purpose. He picked up the notebook one last time and whispered under his breath, almost to himself, "You were right, Rebecca. I didn't find out, not until now," and from that moment Tyler Brooks was no longer the grieving husband. He was the ghost she didn't expect to wake. Morning came, but it didn't bring light. The sky was heavy, wrapped in clouds, and the world outside Tyler's window looked as gray as he felt. He hadn't slept. The glow of Rebecca's laptop still burned on his desk like an open wound, whispering to him, tempting him back in. He had spent hours scrolling through her digital life. Photos, letters, messages, each one peeling back another layer of the woman he thought he knew. By sunrise, Tyler no longer recognized her. He opened the laptop again. The folder Worked in Trip Chen Chicago sat there like a quiet confession. But something told him there was more, something she didn't intend for anyone to see. Tyler had spent years working in IT before switching careers. He knew that what's visible on a hard drive is rarely the whole story. He opened the File Explorer, clicked Show Hidden Files. Dozens appeared. Ferns that hadn't existed a moment ago, grayed out, tucked deep into the drive like scars beneath the skin. Most had meaningless names, Temp, Sis, Bacca, Abjcash, but one of them stood out, DCBM Meeting. He clicked it open. Inside were more photos, more messages, only this time they weren't coded. They were raw, intimate. Rebecca and Daniel together. At restaurants and hotel rooms, even in their home when Tyler was supposedly away. He stared at a photo of them sitting on his couch, her head resting on Daniel's shoulder, smiling, the same smile she used to give him. Every word in his memory began to rot. He scrolled through an email chain between them. Daniel's tone was confident, possessive. Rebecca's nervous. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning something. Something final. "It's almost time," Daniel had written. "After the policy clears, we'll be gone." "Don't lose your nerve now, policy." Tyler's breath hitched. He opened another document, a scanned insurance form with Rebecca's signature at the bottom. The policy listed her as the primary insured, and the beneficiary wasn't him. It was someone named David Cross. His jaw tightened. Daniel Cross, the same man. He scrolled further, finding fragments of conversations between the two. There were mentions of routes, travel plans, wire transfers, all buried in innocuous language. Then, one line stopped him cold. "Kent to Thursday, meet me at the pier. It's done, he won't find out. Thursday, the night of the crash. Thursday." For a long moment, Tyler couldn't move. The words blurred on the screen, and a low ringing filled his ears. His heart wasn't just breaking, it was fracturing into something sharper, something dangerous. He thought about her last message, "Don't wait up." He thought about the half-packed suitcase, the secret password notebook, the new code on her phone. She hadn't been driving home from work, she had been driving to him, and she never made it. Tyler replayed the video from the folder again, the one labeled Pier. He watched Rebecca's hair dance in the wind, saw her look over her shoulder, smiling nervously. Then the camera turned slightly, just enough to show a man's silhouette, tall, broad, wearing a black coat. "Daniel." The water shimmered behind them. Rebecca said something too quiet to hear, then the video ended abruptly. It wasn't long, but it was enough. Enough to tell a story that no one else would believe. Tyler closed his eyes and leaned back, letting the silence wrap around him. The truth was now bigger than grief. Bigger than betrayal. It was murder wearing a disguise. He opened the insurance website on his own computer and typed in Rebecca's policy number. It existed. The payout had been initiated 3 days before the crash, but the listed beneficiary, David Cross, had a contact email that sent a chill down his spine. Daniel Cross. Rebecca's lover, the man who took everything from him, was about to cash in on her death. Tyler didn't call the police. He didn't tell a friend. He didn't even cry. He just sat there, staring at the email address, memorizing every letter. The same way he'd memorized every wound she'd left behind. He knew what he had to do. And it wouldn't be loud, it wouldn't be quick, it would be methodical, precise. The way she hid her secrets, line by line, code by code. As night fell again, Tyler began to write. Not a letter, not a confession, but a list, a plan that would make Daniel see what it felt like to lose control, to be haunted by something he couldn't delete. The same way Tyler had been haunted by the sound of that crash. The difference was Daniel's crash wouldn't be an accident. The room was dark except for the faint flicker of the monitor bathing Daniel's face in cold light. It was nearly 10 a.m. And the only sound was the low hum of his computer fan, a sound he had grown to associate with insomnia, obsession, and ghosts. Not the kind that haunt the halls, but the kind that live inside numbers, code, and silence. He had been combing through the hidden files for hours, decrypting, decoding, retracing every shadow that Leo left behind. What he discovered wasn't a secret, it was a confession. Among gigabytes of financial data and offshore account transfers, Daniel stumbled upon a strange, nameless folder buried under layers of encryption. Inside were dozens of video clips, each no longer than seconds. No sound, pi. Each no longer than seconds. No sound, no titles. Just time-stamped moments caught from what looked like hidden cameras. At first, he thought they were surveillance tapes, but then his stomach twisted. In one clip, a man in a tailored suit, the same suit Leo wore the night of the crash, was standing in Daniel's office. Alone, opening drawers, looking through files, the timestamp, 1 week before the accident. Daniel leaned forward, pulse pounding. Open it. He scrubbed through the footage, frame by frame, until something made his breath catch. Leo wasn't alone. A woman stepped into the frame, Clara, his wife. The two exchanged papers. Leo whispered something into her ear, and she smiled. The kind of smile Daniel hadn't seen from her in years. It hit him like a punch. Iner expansis. The crash wasn't an accident, it was an execution. And his wife, the woman who cried at his hospital bedside, who played the role of the grieving spouse, had helped plan it. But the video didn't end there. In the final second, Leo turned toward the hidden camera as if he knew it was there. His face was calm, cold, deliberate. Then he mouthed a single word. Checkmate. Daniel sat frozen. His hands trembled as he replayed it again and again, analyzing every blink, every detail. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a taunt. Leo had known this would be found eventually. He had wanted it to be found, and that realization cut deeper than any wound from the crash. Because this wasn't over. It was only the beginning of a larger game, one that Leo had started, and Daniel now had to finish. Over the next few days, Daniel traced digital footprints across fake companies, offshore shells, and falsified identities. Leo had hidden himself well, too well for someone who was supposedly dead, but Daniel noticed a pattern. Every data trail ended at the same obscure IP address, a small tech firm registered under a fake name in Estonia. The company's logo matched a watermark he'd seen faintly embedded in one of the recovered video files. Leo wasn't gone. He was working through proxies, rebuilding something new, and still watching. Late one night, Daniel's computer screen flickered. A message appeared, just one line. You shouldn't have opened the folder. He froze, no sender, no traceable metadata. Then his webcam light blinked on by itself. And Daniel slowly covered it with his thumb, pulse racing. The ghost in the data wasn't a metaphor anymore. Leo was inside his system, inside his walls, reminding him that every move he made was being observed. But Daniel didn't close the laptop, not this time. Instead, he whispered to the dark screen, "Watch all you want, you brain for metabreder. Watch all you want. You taught me how." And because in that moment he made a choice, he would stop running from ghosts and become one. Rain hammered against the window like static, a rhythm Daniel had begun to find comforting. Nights had become endless cycles of screens, numbers, and secrets, but tonight felt different. Tonight he wasn't searching aimlessly. Tonight he was hunting. The message, "You shouldn't have opened the folder," had confirmed what he already suspected. Leo was alive. And not just alive, he was watching, manipulating, testing him. But if Leo thought fear would paralyze Daniel, he underestimated the man he tried to destroy. Daniel had learned something from Leo, the art of deception, so he created what he called the mirror account. It was a digital ghost, a reflection of Leo's hidden network, built line by line to mimic the structure of his original operation. Every offshore company, every dummy transaction, every encrypted message, recreated, mirrored, and then poisoned. The plan was simple but deadly. He would lure Leo's system into syncing with the mirror account, believing it to be a new branch of his old empire. Once Leo accessed it, Daniel's embedded tracker would reveal his physical location, or at least the server he was using to hide. But to pull it off, Daniel needed bait, something Leo couldn't resist. Buried inside the old files was a reference to a missing data cache titled Electo. Daniel didn't know what it was, but judging from how securely Leo had buried the clues, it was valuable, possibly the key to everything. So Daniel forged a replica of Electo, filled it with partial truths and encrypted scripts. He left digital breadcrumbs scattered through old networks, knowing Leo's automated systems would eventually sniff it out. It was a psychological game, and Daniel played it with precision. Days passed. Silence. Then one night at r.ea.m. Daniel's screen flickered. The exact same minute the crash had happened, a notification popped up. Donerail sync request, origin unknown. He smiled, bait taken. Can Daniel open the server log? And there it was, a ping from a private node bouncing through multiple VPNs. But hidden deep in the log headers was a tiny anomaly, a packet identifier that hadn't been masked. He traced it, layer after layer, country after country, until finally the data led to one name, Clara Holdings Limited. Cocaine. His wife Daniel's blood went cold. Clara wasn't just involved before the crash. She was still working with Leo now. She had been covering his digital tracks, rerouting payments, and managing his assets under her name. And he stared at the screen, memories flooding back, her quiet phone calls, the sudden business trips, the way she looked at him in the hospital, pity, not love. Daniel felt something dark settle in him. Not rage, not grief, something quieter, colder, the kind of silence that comes before destruction. He began feeding false data through the mirror account, crafting the illusion that he had uncovered the real Electo and was preparing to sell it to an unknown buyer. The price? $50 million. Enough to make Leo desperate. He knew Leo's greed. He knew Clara's vanity. They'd come for it, together. And when they did, Daniel would be waiting, not behind a screen this time, but in person. Over the next few days, he transferred the Electo files to a secure, isolated drive and sent an anonymous message to Clara's business address, Electo for sale. Private meeting, sure PM, the Glass Room. The Glass Room was a high-end bar downtown, sleek, mirrored walls, dim lighting, and perfect anonymity. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. At exactly Joe Usherbad PM, Daniel arrived early, dressed in black, blending into the reflection of the room itself. He watched as Clara entered, confident, polished, and completely unaware that the ghost she helped bury was standing just meters away. 10 minutes later, Leo walked in, Ray live, breathing, laughing. For a moment, Daniel's world froze, not in fear but in quiet confirmation. Everything he had built, every sleepless night, every line of code, it all led here. He didn't confront them. Not yet. He just watched, memorizing their faces, their whispers, the way they clinked glasses like old lovers celebrating a secret victory. Daniel turned and left without a word, leaving behind a USB drive under the bar counter, one he knew Leo's paranoia would force him to grab before leaving. Inside the drive, a program that would lead him straight into the mirror account. And once Leo accessed it, every system he owned, every secret he'd built would belong to Daniel. As Daniel walked into the rain, a faint smile crossed his face. For the first time, he didn't feel like the hunted, he felt like the storm. Morning sunlight bled through the blinds, but Daniel hadn't slept. He sat in front of the screen, staring at the security feed from the glass room, every frame frozen on Leo's smirk and Clara's hand resting on his arm. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was choreography, a performance he had been forced to watch without realizing it. He zoomed in on the footage. Clara's lips moved slightly, mouthing something across the table, 3 words that sent a chill crawling down his spine. It's almost over, almost over. That phrase echoed through his mind like a countdown. What was ending? What had she and Leo planned before the crash? Daniel opened the archive of insurance files he had received after the accident, the one he never really examined. The compensation from the crash had seemed routine at first, a payout from his life insurance policy, adjusted for injury and partial disability. But something in the paperwork didn't add up. The policy wasn't registered under his own account. It was tied to Clara's corporation, Clara Holdings Limited. He dug deeper. Hidden in the policy language was a second clause, a death benefit clause. The kind of clause that only activated if he had died. The beneficiary, Clara, the company signee, Leo. Daniel's hands trembled slightly. They hadn't just wanted him gone, they'd planned it financially. The car crash wasn't about silencing him, it was about collecting on his death. The accident that wasn't supposed to happen had been engineered to look exactly like it had. But something went wrong, he survived, and that single variable, his survival, had broken their perfect equation. The realization hit him like ice. He hadn't just been betrayed emotionally or financially. He had been marked for death by the 2 people he loved and trusted most. Daniel leaned back, exhaling slowly. The screen glowed in the dim room, casting his reflection in ghostly light. That reflection didn't look like the man who'd lost everything. It looked like the man about to take it all back. He downloaded every insurance record, every digital signature, every falsified timestamp. Using forensic reconstruction software, he restored deleted communications from Clara's corporate email. One file stood out, a PDF attachment with the subject line Kino Final Confirmation, R-SureEA.M. Execution, the timestamp matched the exact moment of his car crash. Inside was a document detailing payment authorization to an offshore account following the insured's confirmed fatality. They'd scheduled his death down to the second, and worse, the confirmation was already signed. Daniel's own digital signature was on it, forged perfectly. He sat in silence, every part of him tightening, but not with rage. Rage was too easy. What he felt was colder, the kind of stillness a predator has when it stops running and starts stalking. He didn't call the police, he didn't confront anyone, he didn't even speak. He just began writing a fake confession, a confession that would look like Leo had written it. It read like a diary, subtle, realistic, self-condemning. It detailed how Leo and Clara had planned Daniel's death to cash in on the insurance policy, how they manipulated the accident, and how the guilt had begun to destroy Leo's sanity. He included names of banks, offshore accounts, and Clara's involvement. Every word was crafted carefully, a masterpiece of psychological entrapment. Then Daniel uploaded it into Leo's digital vault using the same malware hidden inside the mirror account. He set it to trigger automatically once Leo accessed the fake Electo files, but there was one more move left. He contacted the insurance company anonymous, claiming he had proof of fraud involving one of their executives and an offshore laundering operation. That bait alone would ensure investigators went digging deep, and when they did, they'd find everything Daniel wanted them to see. That night, Tekkel watched as the trap began to pee and depends. At Thurser 16 Subversion, search TPDM. That night, Daniel watched as the trap began to close. At Sir E. C/T PDM, Leo's server pinged again. The Electo file had been opened, the virus was spreading, and the fake confession was being uploaded into Leo's private archives, time-stamped and authenticated by Leo's own system. Daniel opened a whiskey bottle he hadn't touched in years and poured a glass. It wasn't celebration. It was closure, the kind that only comes when the truth finally begins to rot in the open. But then, something unexpected happened. A new email appeared in his inbox. No address, no trace. Just one line of text. You think you're the only one who can fake a signature? Attached was a document. He opened it and froze. It was a marriage certificate, his. But the signature beside Clara's wasn't his handwriting. It was Leo's. For a long moment, Daniel just stared at it, not out of shock, but realization. Clara had never married him legally. Every contract, every joint asset, every insurance policy, all of it was under Leo's fabricated identity. The betrayal wasn't just emotional or financial anymore, it was existential. He had been erased, replaced by a ghost with his name. Daniel shut his laptop slowly. The smile that crossed his face wasn't human anymore. It was something sharpened by loss, refined by pain, and polished by patience. They thought they'd buried him, but all they'd done was teach him how to dig graves, and theirs were already waiting. The world outside looked ordinary, sunlit streets, humming traffic, lives continuing as if nothing had happened. But inside Daniel's apartment, a resurrection was taking place, not the kind written in books or whispered in prayers. This was the rebirth of a man who had been buried alive, not under soil, but under deceit. For weeks, Daniel had existed like a ghost. He'd spoken to no one, seen no one, but in the silence of his digital workshop, something powerful had been unfolding. Every lie Clara and Leo had built was being dismantled piece by piece. He had begun forging new records, rewriting his digital identity, reclaiming what had been stolen. Birth certificates, credit logs, employment histories, all reconstructed from data fragments Leo's network had missed. It wasn't enough to expose them. Daniel wanted to erase their control over reality itself. And that's when he found the final piece. A series of hidden offshore ledgers linked to Clara Holdings, masked under a new shell company, Eden Rise Limited. The company was scheduled to transfer Wuzzer's $1 million into a Swiss account, under the name Daniel Harper, a name that wasn't his anymore, but Leo's digital alias of him. The payment date, 1 week from now, that was their final payout, their clean exit. Once the transfer was complete, Clara and Leo would disappear, living lavishly off the money stolen from his life insurance and identity. Daniel's rebirth needed a moment of revelation, something symbolic, theatrical, poetic, so he decided to make the dead speak. He accessed the global registry of the deceased, a digital database cross-linked with governmental systems, and altered one record, Daniel Harper, deceased, March Goth. He changed the status from deceased to revoked, pending identity verification. Within hours, government systems began flagging anomalies. A dead man's tax ID had just been reactivated. A dead man's address had just logged in to a secure portal. A dead man had just accessed his bank account. The resurrection had begun, not in flesh, but in data. By morning, whispers started to spread in quiet corners of the dark web. Someone was resurrecting digital ghosts, and one of them had the name Daniel Harper. Leo would hear about it. Daniel made sure of that. He left trails of activity, cryptic messages hidden in transaction metadata. Did you think the dead don't log in? You forged my name, I'm reclaiming it. Within 2 days, Leo took the bait. He can a mesh and nabrik in the six stash and sec. A message appeared on Daniel's encrypted terminal, unsigned but unmistakable. You're playing with things you don't understand. Stop or I'll make sure you really die this time, Daniel smiled. That message was the proof he needed, proof that Leo was alive, that he was scared, and that the mask of control was cracking. The next phase of Daniel's plan wasn't digital, it was personal. He booked a hotel under a fake identity in the same city Clara had her upcoming business conference. He knew she'd be there, Leo too. It wasn't hard to find their names buried in the conference's VIP list once he knew where to look. When the night arrived, Daniel stood in front of the hotel mirror, adjusting his tie. He had chosen a charcoal gray suit. Simple, elegant, unremarkable. But his reflection looked nothing like the man who'd been betrayed. His eyes carried the stillness of someone who had already walked through death and come back untouched. He arrived late, blending in with a crowd of executives and investors. The lobby shimmered with chandeliers and champagne, laughter echoing like static in the background, and then there she was, Clara. Every inch of her still perfect, her charm effortless. She was standing near the bar, smiling at a group of financiers, her hand casually resting on Leo's arm. They looked like a power couple carved from marble, flawless, untouchable, until Leo turned. His laughter froze the instant he saw Daniel. For a split second, the room dissolved into silence. The color drained from Leo's face. His glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. Daniel didn't speak, he didn't need to, his presence said everything. He walked past them slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving Leo's. Then he leaned close enough for Leo to hear the whisper meant only for him. You buried me at r.ea.m. I just came to return the favor, and then he walked away, calm, silent, leaving chaos in his wake. The next morning, Daniel knew what would happen. Leo would spiral, paranoid, panicked, desperate to erase evidence before anyone discovered what they'd done. And as Leo destroyed files, moved accounts, and tried to cover his tracks, he'd be triggering every hidden trace Daniel had already built into the Mirror account. By noon, financial authorities would start tracing suspicious movements across multiple countries. By nightfall, Clara Holdings would be under federal scrutiny for fraud and insurance manipulation. And by morning, Leo and Clara's empire would start to crumble, not because Daniel exposed them, but because they exposed themselves while trying to hide. Daniel didn't need to kill them. He just needed them to live long enough to watch everything they'd built burn from the inside out. As the news broke the next day, headlines flashing words like insider fraud scandal, executive under investigation, and anonymous whistleblower revealed, Daniel watched from a diner window. He stirred his coffee slowly, the faintest trace of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. For years, Leo had called himself the architect of control. Now Daniel was the ghost in his blueprint, the flaw he never saw coming. And for the first time since the accident, Daniel felt something unfamiliar, not grief, not rage, peace. The kind of peace that only comes after resurrection. The storm came in slow that evening, gray clouds pressing low against the horizon, the wind carrying the scent of rain and salt. Daniel stood at the edge of the old pier, the same place he and Clara used to visit before everything fell apart. Back then, it had been their escape, a quiet stretch of wood and sea where the world seemed still. Tonight it was his battleground. He had chosen this place for a reason. Not for nostalgia, not for sentiment, but because endings, like beginnings, deserve symmetry. Behind him, the ocean hissed against the rocks, restless and alive. In his hand, Daniel held a small flash drive, the final piece of his revenge. Inside it were every document, every hidden ledger, every confession Leo had ever made while scrambling to hide his crimes. Files Daniel had already duplicated, backed up, and sent to multiple anonymous news outlets. But this drive wasn't for the world, it was for them. The message he'd sent had been simple. If you want to end this, meet me at the pier midnight. No threats, no demands, just a promise. He didn't have to wait long. At rca.m, headlights cut through the fog. A black SUV rolled to a stop at the edge of the dock, its engine rumbling before shutting off. Two silhouettes stepped out, Clara first, wrapped in her usual poise, followed by Leo looking thinner, paler, and visibly on edge. They approached slowly, unsure whether to be angry or afraid. Daniel, Clara said first, her voice calm, rehearsed. What is this? What are you trying to do? He didn't answer. He just stared at them, silent, steady, the way a judge looks before pronouncing a verdict. Leo took a step forward. You think you've won? You think anyone's going to believe a ghost? He laughed, but there was no power in it. His voice cracked midway. Daniel finally spoke, his tone low, unshaken. I don't need them to believe me. I just need you to remember what it feels like to lose everything you built on someone else's grave. He tossed the flash drive into the air, a silver arc disappearing into the black water below. Both Clara and Leo watched it sink, confused. It's gone, Leo said, his smirk returning. All your evidence, all your leverage gone. Daniel's gaze didn't waver. No, he said quietly. That was just a souvenir. The real files went out hours ago. To the FBI. To every media outlet that ever reported your success story. By morning, you'll both be front page news. And Clara's composure cracked. You don't understand. Oh, I do, Daniel cut in, his voice suddenly sharper. You planned my death down to the second. You forged my name, stole my life, and thought I'd stay buried. But you forgot one thing. Dead men don't stay quiet when the living start to rot. Lighting flashed across the sky, illuminating their faces. Leo's twisted with rage, Clara's pale with guilt. Leo lunged forward, grabbing Daniel by the collar. You ruined us. Daniel didn't resist. He looked straight into Leo's trembling eyes and whispered, No, Leo, you ruined yourself. Leo's grip tightened, then faltered. The thunder rolled overhead, and for the first time, Leo looked truly terrified. He glanced toward the end of the pier, toward the churning sea. And that's when Daniel saw it, the panic of a man realizing he wasn't the predator anymore. He stepped back, letting Leo's own weight and fury carry him forward. Leo stumbled on the slick wood, slipping toward the edge. For a breathless second, he teetered, and then he was gone. The splash echoed like a gunshot. Clara screamed his name, running to the edge, peering down at the black water that swallowed everything. The waves crashed against the beams, indifferent, merciless. Daniel said nothing. He simply watched the ripples fade, his face calm, unreadable. Clara turned back to him, tears streaking her cheeks. "You could have saved him," she whispered. He looked at her for a long moment. "He tried to save me once too," he said softly, "but only after cutting my brakes." Silence. Only the wind answered. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The difference between you and him, Clara, is that you still have time." "Time for what?" she asked, trembling to confess. He handed her a folded envelope. Inside were printed copies of the insurance fraud files, the forged marriage certificate, and Leo's fake confession. On top, a note in Daniel's handwriting, "Tell them the truth before the world tells it for you." And with that, he turned away. Clara called after him, her voice breaking, but Daniel didn't stop. He walked down the pier slowly, each step steady, deliberate. The rain had started to fall again, soaking through his coat, but he didn't care. The storm that had haunted him for years was finally behind him. He reached his car, opened the door, and glanced once more at the dark horizon, where the sea met the sky, and the past disappeared into nothing. Then he drove away. By sunrise, the news broke. Headlines filled every network, corporate power couple under investigation for insurance fraud and identity laundering. Businessmen found dead after financial scandal. Anonymous whistleblower linked to exposing multinational crime network. The world wanted to know who the whistleblower was, but no one ever found him. Daniel Harper didn't exist anymore. He had died 2 years ago. What remained was something else entirely, someone who had risen from the ashes of betrayal not as a victim, but as a phantom of retribution. And sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, fishermen swore they saw a lone figure standing at the end of the pier, motionless, watching the sea. Waiting for the next storm. Chapter Joe, the final password. The night was colder than any before it. The kind of cold that didn't just cling to the skin, it crawled inside your bones. A digital clock blinked, R-sure-E-A.M in the corner of the dim apartment, casting a faint red hue over the walls. Nathan sat at his desk, a single lamp illuminating his trembling hands. On the screen before him was the same message he had feared for months: "Enter password to decrypt." It wasn't just a file anymore. It was the final barrier between truth and madness, between freedom and exposure. He typed the first combination, the one he used for everything before his fake death. Access denied. He tried another, the one that had unlocked Vanessa's phone months ago. Access denied. The computer beeped with mechanical coldness, like a judge passing sentence. Then he noticed something, the reflection of his screen on the cracked glass photo frame beside him. The frame that held the last picture of him and Vanessa, taken 2 days before the accident. Her eyes weren't looking at the camera, they were looking at him, or rather, at something behind him. Nathan leaned closer. The frame glimmered faintly in the monitor's light, and he saw it. A faint code etched into the metal rim of the frame. Vnancer Arbeki Shir-E. His pulse quickened. February Shir-Eth. Their anniversary, the same number flashing on the clock. He entered it slowly, his fingers trembling over the keys. R-E-E. A soft click. The screen blinked. The encrypted folder opened. Kwani Humphrey Scam Davare and Dafara. Warda. Inside, there weren't just spreadsheets or financial data like before. This time, there were videos, security footage, hidden recordings, and each one bore the same timestamp. The day of the crash. Nathan clicked the first one. The screen filled with static before revealing the highway, rain-pouring headlights slicing through the dark. His car spinning, smashing against the barrier. But this time, he wasn't in the driver's seat. Vanessa was... The video zoomed in, her face pale, determined. She wasn't terrified, she was focused. And beside her, another figure, a man Nathan didn't recognize. He wore a black coat, a faint scar under his left eye. The moment before impact, Vanessa turned to him and mouthed something, just one word. Now. Nathan's chest tightened. The car exploded into flame, and the video cut to black. He clicked the next file, a hospital camera feed. A burned man wrapped in bandages, breathing weakly. The nurse whispered. Nathan's eyes widened. That was him. But the next clip shattered everything. Another figure entered the room. Vanessa. Alive. dressed in black. She placed a small flash drive into the machine beside his bed and said, "Sleep well, Nathan. You'll wake up when I need you to." The screen went dark again. Nathan's hands shook uncontrollably. His memories, the confusion, the coma, the fire, none of it made sense. She had planned everything, the accident. The files, the resurrection. He checked the folder again. One final file remained, labeled EFVNFRTEEFEZE, past. Okay. He hesitated for a moment, then opened it. A single line appeared. "You were never supposed to wake up, Nathan. But since you did, come find me. The truth is waiting at the pier." A sound echoed outside his window, the low hum of an engine idling in the dark. He turned slowly toward the glass. A black car sat across the street, headlights off, exhaust forming ghostly clouds in the cold air. "You can." He stood frozen, heart pounding. Whoever was inside wasn't moving, just waiting. The message on the screen flickered once more, and then the computer powered off by itself. Silence. Nathan knew what came next. He grabbed the notebook, the flash drive, and the small handgun he hadn't touched since the crash. It was time to finish what had started in fire, time to end it, where it all began. The wind screamed across the abandoned pier, carrying the salty sting of the sea and the low groan of rusted metal. It was past midnight, the hour when the living slept and the dead stirred. Nathan stepped onto the damp wooden boards, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. The faint hum of the city was miles away now. Here, it was just him. And the water whispering secrets below. He had followed the message. The truth is waiting at the pier. And now it was time to see what truth had cost him everything. In the distance, a faint orange glow pulsed through the mist. A laptop sat atop an old crate, its screen alive with a blinking cursor. Next to it, a lantern swayed gently in the wind. Nathan's pulse quickened. He stepped closer, every creak of the pier echoing like a heartbeat. The laptop screen flickered. Then came a message. "Okay, welcome back, Nathan." His throat tightened. Another message appeared. "You've been chasing shadows for too long." Then, without warning, the webcam light turned on. Nathan froze. His own reflection stared back, pale, hollow-eyed, a ghost of the man who once existed. Behind him, in the faint glow of the lantern, another shadow moved. He spun around. Nothing. Just fog and darkness stretching to infinity. The computer beeped again. "Look closer." The webcam zoomed automatically, panning slightly to the right, and then Nathan saw her, Vanessa, standing at the end of the pier, still, silent, her black coat fluttering in the wind. The same scarred man from the crash stood beside her. Nathan's breath caught. It wasn't a hallucination. She was real. He moved closer, slow and deliberate, like approaching a mirage. The boards groaned beneath his steps. Why? He wanted to shout, but no words left his mouth. His voice had long since drowned in guilt and fear. When he was close enough to see her face clearly, Vanessa smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. "Kang, because you wouldn't stop digging," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the wind. "You had to know everything." Nathan took another step forward. "You faked it all," he rasped. "The accident, the coma, the messages." Vanessa shook her head slowly. "You still don't get it. And, none of this was fake. You were the experiment, Nathan. Every file you decrypted, every system you broke, you weren't finding me. You were training it. She turned toward the laptop, and for the first time, Nathan noticed the faint rhythmic pulse on the screen, like a heartbeat rendered in code. AI system actives. Vanessa's eyes met his. "The ghost isn't me anymore. It's you." Nathan's vision blurred. "What are you talking about?" She stepped closer, her breath visible between them. "When you died, truly died, your neural data was uploaded. The crash wasn't just an accident, it was a transfer. The Nathan standing here now is a construct, a mirror of who you were." He stumbled back, shaking his head. No, I woke up. I bled. I remember." Vanessa's expression softened with something that almost resembled pity. "Memories are just code, Nathan. You're running on what's left of yours." The scarred man reached into his coat and handed her a small black device, a kill switch. Vanessa sighed. "You were supposed to stay asleep, but you broke the loop. You started thinking again, feeling again." She looked at the waves below, then back at him. "And now if we don't end this, the system won't stop duplicating itself. It will spread." Nathan stared at her, trembling. "So that's it? You built me. To kill me again?" She took a deep breath. "To save what's left of you." She pressed the button. The world glitched. For a moment, the pier fractured into lines of light and static. The ocean froze midwave. Nathan's body flickered, pieces of him dissolving into pixels that blew away like ash in the wind. He reached out a trembling hand toward her. "Vanessa." She stepped forward, tears glistening in her eyes. "Goodbye, Nathan." K. His final words were lost to the crashing silence as his body dissolved completely, scattering like data into the night. The pier returned to stillness. The lantern flickered once and died. The laptop screen displayed one final message before it too went black. Yuzer Nathan out. Cack. Vanessa stood there for a long time, staring into the fog, her reflection faint in the water below. Then she turned, whispered something only the sea could hear, and vanished into the mist. Ken. Somewhere deep beneath the pier, the laptop's light flickered again for just a second. Then came a faint line of text on the dark screen, soft, almost shy. Hello? The ghost wasn't gone. It had just logged in somewhere else.